All right, so thanks for coming back. And I want to be able to share some more information regarding pandas. More specifically, I want to be able to demonstrate how to use pandas with CSV files, especially in the areas of data analytics. We're going to want to be able to import data from other sources, and CSV files is one of those sources. Now, let me show you one thing here. This is my Code Sushi project folder, and I had this basic pandas video that I created just a few hours ago. But in here, I added some data, and it was John Wick data, and I want to show you what this data looks like. First, I want to show you how to get it in there, and it's very basic. You could just easily go to this upload option and go find, some kind of data that you might want to put in there and load it up. Also, what you can do is go and just kind of paste in or save to the folder, the project folder that you're working in. So that's what this data particular is. What's really good about jupyter-lab is I can actually view this data without having to go look at it in Excel or other kinds of like Notepad++ types of software. So let me just double click on it, and here we can see some of the data. It is automatically put into a CSV format. There are other options here. Of course, the default is comma. You can also make some edits. You can right click. You can go open with CSV editor, and here you can actually see the data. And we have some scenes: movie, scene, knife, hand, other, gun, total kills, etc. By the way, this data set, I want to say I got it from a source online, which I did, and they analyzed all the John Wick movies up to chapter 3, and then been able to put all this information together. I happen to put this into this CSV format. I want to give appropriate appropriations to the individual who created the data. I just want to let you know I can't remember who that is, and rightfully it's not my data, but it is data that I did get from the internet. And of course, if you watch the movies, I'm sure that you can probably create the data yourself. So working with pandas, this is the basic stuff that I'm including with my my pandas files. But the most important things are these first two lines: import pandas as PD and import numpy as NP. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start working with some basic stuff. Now, the first thing I want to do when I work with pandas, I like to use the format where anything that I create a data frame with, I put the DF prefix with it. Not a lot of people do that. I do. But I want to create a data frame for John Wick, and it is going to use pandas read CSV. And then I got to put the name of that file, which happens to be, I got to type properly, John_Wick.csv, and that's all I need. And by the way, I'm just going to put df John Wick right here so I can look at that data once I bring it in, and there we go. All right, so that is actually the data that is in that spreadsheet is now in a pandas data frame. How easy was that? It even includes all of the column headers, and it has an index that is listed off to the side. We can see that information. By the way, when you're working with pandas data more appropriately, what you should be doing is doing a display, not print, but a display of that particular data, and that will actually give you that particular item. Only because I put this as the last item, it was displayed without me having to use the display command. But if you really want to be able to show this, let's say in the middle of your script, and you want to display it, then you have to use the display option. All right, so let's go to the next thing that I want to share with you. Again, using display, I want to show you display John Wick data frame, and I want to show you the info options. And check this out. What's really cool here is that by using pandas.info function, you can now get information about the data set. So we can see that we have 10 columns, and 13 of them are not null, right? We have 13 entries. And also the data type, which is in the far right-hand side of this area, it tells you what is text by calling it an object, and also tells you what is numerical by showing you that it's integer 64. And actually integers, well, they are what they are. And of course, float would imply a decimal value. And if I come back and look at the data up here, you can see that it is the shot accuracy, that is the only thing that is a decimal. Everything else is integers. So you can easily look at info to get a lot of information about your pandas data frame. All right, so let's do one more thing. I mentioned that we should use display, and I'm going to do this time. I'm going to do John Wick data frame. I'm going to do the head, and head by default only gives you the first 5 rows of a database. And actually, if you put a number inside these parentheses like 2, you can get just the first 2. Alternatively, if you want to see the last, you can use the option of tail, and it will give you the last 2 tail. Of course, if you left that number blank, it would give you the default of 5. Let me just go ahead and put head here and say this is actually what I want. Now, one of the things about displaying this particular data is that when I look at it, right, I have all this information. It's perfect. It's great. But now let's say I want to get some statistics from it. So we can use an option, and I'm going to continue to use the display option, but we can use a function called describe. And now all of a sudden we've got descriptive statistics of all of our data. Now, it's only going to take into account those that are not object values. So we have the information here. We do have 2 columns right here, the movie and the scene, that are object values. Obviously, you can't get the sum of those, so it's not going to give you descriptive statistics on those. But everything that has a numerical value, we can see here. Now, by the way, that is a lot of zeros, and sometimes I just like to round it off to only 2 zeros or maybe none whatsoever. And let me show you an option that you can do here. Again, I'm going to use the display, but I am going to put NP as in numpys, round, right? And I want to round all the data that is inside this describe option, and then I'm going to put decimals equal to 2. And when I do this, by the way, I have to put one more parenthesis at the end to close off the display. When I do this, it now changes everything. It gives me the statistics, but it now rounds everything to 2 decimal places. So that might be helpful if you see a lot of data, you see a lot of zeros, but you want to just see it in a very plain, simple way that might be easier to consume. That is a great tool that you can use. Now, what's really cool about Pandas, right, is that you can do another display option, is that you can display based on condition. So I'm going to say that, let's say that I wanted to look at just the data that comes from Chapter 1. I just want to look at these rows, which happens to be the first 5. Maybe what we could do here, just so that way you know that I'm not cheating, I want to just display everything that's Chapter 2, so that way it'll be the middle 4 rows of data. So what we have to do is that the way that Pandas works is that you must put a conditional statement based on the column that you want to base the condition on. So first you have to call the data frame. In this case, it's data frame John Wick. And then you have to call the column. Now, in order to call the column correctly, you have to once again identify the data frame that you're calling from. And the column, in this case, is going to be movie. All right. So I have the data frame, and then I have the column, and I want to get where the column is equal to chapter-2. Okay, so this actually sets us up so that way we can display this entire data frame where this column is equal to chapter 2. So let's go ahead and run that, and there we go. So now we're just getting data based on that particular condition. So basically the rules here is you've got your data frame, and then you have to put your condition here, right? And if you're going to do based on a column, you have to denote the entire column this way. Now, I'm sure there are other ways of doing this. This is the way that I've used it most frequently, and I hope that it's something that you could put into your toolbox as well. All right, here's some really cool stuff. All right, so let's say that we're looking at the data here, And let's say that I wanted to get just basic sum data of like, what is the sum total of all the knife kills, hand kills, other kills, etc., and then the total kills column. So we have an option here to get that in our display, is that we will say, give me the John Wick data frame, but specifically I want knife, hand, other, and gun sum totals. Okay, so I have to identify which particular columns I want. Now, what actually I'm doing is I'm creating a subset of the Pandas data frame. And when you create a subset of the Pandas data frame, you have to use these double square brackets, and that creates that subset. There are times when you use it and there's times when you don't. In this case, we do want to use it, and I'm just going to do a sum option so that way I can see the sum total of those 4 items. All right, so there we go. I've had a total of 18 knife kills out of all 3 movies, 15 hand, 19 other, and 238 gun kills. All right, so that's a lot, right? And if you haven't seen the John Wick movies, I'm surprised that number is so low. All right, so let's say that originally the data here that's in total kills, this column right here, let's say it didn't exist. All right, and we want to recreate it. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have to drop that column so I could show you how this works. So what I want to do is I want to reassign my John Wick data frame to be equal to the John Wick data frame dropping the column of total kills. So the way that we drop columns is what we call the data frame. We type in the function drops, and then we have to put parentheses, our column names, and I want total kills to be the one that we drop. There we go. And what I'm going to do just for simplicity is I am going to display the data frame John Wick, and I'm just going to look at the first 2 rows. That's all I actually need. So what's going to happen is in this particular part of the statement, I'm dropping the column total kills, and I'm reassigning it into my variable data frame John Wick, and then I'm going to display that new data frame. And so there we go. I have the first 2 columns, and you'll notice that on the headers, or excuse me, the column headers, there is no longer total kills. Okay, so what I want to do to add that up, right, is I have to add up everything that's knife, hand, other, and gun. I want to be able to do that total kill. So first of all, let me kind of step this through. We have to actually create a new column, right? And here's how we create that new column, is that we have our data frame, John Wick, and we need those headers that we want to sum up. So basically, we are going to take this same thing here, and we are going to paste this right here. Now, we saw that when we did the sum here, actually what happened, it gave us up here the sum total of the columns. But this time we want the sum total of the rows. So one little trick that we have to do here is we have to change the axis. By the way, axis 0 is the default. Axis 0 is summing up the entire columns. So now we want to go horizontally, or by the sum up the rows. So now we have to set axis to 1. Right, so that's going to be our new column. And I want to show you how this works. So I'm going to do this in 2 steps, and then I'm going to show you how we do this in 1 basic step. So here we have our sum function, and remember we had 13 records. Well, here is those 13 records, and this is the sum of these 4 items. Now, does it match? Actually, we should go up to the top here, because remember we didn't delete it. So if we look right here in the total kills, 13, 28, 16, 10, just as a memory, 13, 28, 16, 10. So it's the same data. So here's how we add that back to our Pandas data set. Remember, this is how we drop a column. Here's how we add a column. So we have to define that new column. We're going to call it total kills. All right. And we are going to set that equal to what our new column is. And to do this all in one step, I'm not even going to use that variable. I'm just going to do this. And let's go ahead and display our data frame, John Wick. Let's look at the first two rows again, and boom. Now, total kills is in there. That we've obviously been able to add things up, add it onto our Pandas data frame. The last thing that we want to do, though, is that let's say that we want total kills to exist after gun, right? So here's gun. We want total kills to be right after that. Unfortunately, Pandas does not do a really fun and easy way of reordering columns, but here's how you do it. You actually have to reassign to the variable, the data frame variable, the subset of your data, and you have to name the columns in the order to which you want them to appear in. So now I've reordered them: movie, scene, knife, hand, other, gun. I put total kills here, and then hits, miss, shots taken, etc., right after. By the way, I could probably split this up. I could probably do this to kind of help us out. And let's just do that. So now you can kind of see what's happening. So that way we kind of see what that is going to look like when I'm done. I'm just going to display it one more time, and let's go ahead and run it. And you see that's how we move total kills from the end to the middle section where we had it before. By the way, if you want to save this CSV or any other CSV, what's really easy with Pandas is we have a data frame to CSV file format. You just simply give it whatever name you want. I'm going to call this R2 just so that way I can show you how it saves. And this time I also don't want the index in there, so I typically put index false. All right, so I went ahead and ran that. Let's look here. And where is it? Refresh, please. Come on, where are you? There it is. It just saved it to the working directory that I'm in. Let's open it up and look, there is my data, right? And what's important here is that total kills is right where I wanted it. So you can see how I manipulated data from a CSV file, gave you a little bit of input as to how to kind of work around that in this particular episode. And so I hope this was helpful to you. And thank you very much for joining me. We'll see you next time.